Very special episode of the Mike Sennello Show. Welcome back from that brief intermission. Tonight we'll be interviewing our first councilman, who's Mike Nahom. He's running for town council here. He is serving on the town council as an incumbent. Just to remind everybody of what's coming up for the course of the week. Tomorrow we'll be interviewing our first candidate for the Board of Finance. That's Diane Clafe. That's happening at 7 p.m. We'll also be interviewing Board of Finance candidate Joe DiGregorio at 8 p.m. on Tuesday. We'll be finishing off the week of interviews with Sal Rankowitz at 7 p.m. He's running for town council on Thursday. So Sal Rankowitz this Thursday at 7 p.m. for town council. We're going to take a quick break on Wednesday night because I want to attend the Board of Education, the PTO-sponsored Board of Education candidates meet, the candidates event. As I've mentioned too, we also have, I'm working on an interview for Sunday night, and Wednesday of next week, we got somebody else lined up too. Once we get that all hammered out, I'll get that all out to you. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, just stay tuned, and we will. If you subscribe to me on YouTube, you can stay better tuned and stay better up to date with all that is coming up in the next coming weeks. Again, thanks for everyone who joined in tonight's earlier broadcast of the Mike Sennello Show. Really appreciate the live audience we had there. Really appreciate the engaging question and answer Q&A session we had afterwards. So we'll be doing that tonight too with our interviewee today with Mike Nahom. So get those questions in before you forget them. As soon as you have a question, just go ahead and drop it in the comment section here, either in YouTube or in Facebook. I'll get them forwarded over to Mike at the end of our interview. And with that said, let's introduce today's guest. Tonight's guest is Mike Nahom. Mike, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks, Mike, for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Mike, I normally use this opportunity before we get started to tell people how they can reach and follow you. You've decided to do something a little bit different. I understand you want to plug the culinary school.
Yeah, I've been a member of the community culinary school for many years. It's an amazing program. I'm actually right now not on the board. I took a break as of this summer, just trying to running for office and caught up with my two businesses. But it's an amazing business. A nonprofit. Our original focus was to it's a job training program. So people with either unemployed or underemployed can come to the culinary school and get training for the culinary industry. And we really do a great job of placing those people in good paying jobs. A lot of times we push them to the best way, the best jobs are like the hospitals or other situations where they can get full benefits. And so we try to put them towards those types of programs. But during the pandemic, we weren't doing a lot of training since, we couldn't have people into the kitchen. So we actually pivoted a little bit, and we started, we were already doing meals for the senior citizens, but that got expanded during COVID to where, those people could not come in to have meals at the senior center. So we were actually delivering them to the senior center. We were also helping the people in New Milford with meals. Have been doing that for a long time. So it's a great program. And now we're starting to get back to teaching our classes and get people into good paying jobs.
So, folks, and if you want to follow the culinary school, I'm sure they have a page on Facebook. I'm sure you guys can look them up on Google. They're probably the easiest thing to find. So
Community Culinary School.
The Community Culinary School of New Milford. They're a great, Mike's talked about them in the past before. They are a great nonprofit to go ahead and support. So, Mike, with that said, and with that out of the way, let's chat. So I'm going to start off with the same question that I always start off everybody with. And that's because I want everybody at home to not only get to know the candidate, but to get to know the person a little bit, at least before we get started. So, Mike, same question everybody gets when we first start off. What brought you to New Milford?
Well, I grew up in Brookfield, so I wasn't too far away. I spent my childhood in Brookfield, and then I went off to college. And when I came back from college, my parents had moved up to New Milford, and my dad had bought a lot, and he had another lot next door to his. We're up by Canterbury School, and he offered that to me, and I looked at him and said, "I don't want to really live next door to my dad." But my wife looked at me and said, "Were you kidding me?" So we built a house and raised our 3 kids here in New Milford. And it's been a wonderful experience. I've always been involved in the community, with various nonprofits. And, I started out helping out with the soccer program. I got to the point where I was running the in-house program. And, then I was also during that same time, I was coaching up at Canterbury School. Since my house is kind of on the grounds of Canterbury, it was a very good, I was a volunteer, but it was good because they did a lot for me, allowing me to use their facilities for when I was training. And I gave back, but as my kids got older, I kind of weaned off of that and wasn't doing too much coaching on the track side, still a little bit with soccer. And then there was an opening at New Milford High School, and a few of the parents asked me if I'd take it. And, after some discussions with my kids, with whether they want me to coach, I decided to coach there, and I'm still coaching there, even though my kids have graduated. So, cause I love interacting with the kids. Then I started as far as my town politics as town councilman, and as on the planning commission, and did that for 2 terms, and then had the opportunity to run for council and did that. And now I'm trying to get reelected for my 3rd term. But, New Milford, as Pete has said over and over again, it is, the best town in the USA. It's such an amazing community of people that want to help each other. The nonprofits and the volunteers in this town are amazing to help people get to where they want to be. And, as I own 2 businesses in town, and my one business, which is a small manufacturing company, I had an opportunity to move it to Brookfield, and because there was a property that was available that I could move right into, but I chose to stay in New Milford. So I'm actually going to build a new facility in New Milford on Route 7 up.
Cool.
Up kind of near Robert's Auto. So yeah, it's a wonderful town, and I've been a part of it, and I want to keep being a part of it, and I love that fact that I can give back and help out.
Yeah, I want to actually come back to that conversation in a minute about the new construction you're going to be doing. So we'll get to that towards the end here. But as far as getting into politics in the first place, was there an event or a thing that first got you? Because you mentioned you first joined the planning commission.
My whole life I've always given, as I said, I was, me and a few other people, including my current partner, Lou, at the health club, we got involved in the soccer, and we saw an opportunity to really try and get it to just get it organized and get it really moving. And we did that. And, I did that, and then I started coaching. And then as I kind of started weaning myself from soccer, I wanted to get more involved in the town politics, just because it's something I always wanted to do and get more involved. And so there's no reason, no set thing that made me want to do it, except that I wanted to help our community and do what's best for this town.
So and after a tenure on the planning commission, you decided to run for town council. What was there an impetus to go from the planning commission to the town council?
I think someone had asked me to run. And I talked to the Republicans, and I thought I had a good shot. Being involved in town, I know a lot of people, and if people know me, they know I'm honest and sometimes blunt, but that's who I am, and I'm going to give it how I feel it is. And sometimes it's a good thing. People don't have to worry about what I'm saying in closed doors, because I say what I feel right in front of everybody.
Yeah, and in some cases that actually doesn't align with what the rest of the Republicans on town council are, supporting. So sometimes Mike Nahom you'll find has been lone wolfing a bit. So yeah. So your tenure, because we actually have a tenure to work with, so we're going to talk about that because it does inform what people can expect moving forward in some ways. So your tenure has been completely overtaken by a single issue to me, from what I've seen of things, and that's COVID. You know that I follow these town council meetings pretty closely. So COVID to me seems to be just like a single issue that has just completely overtaken the last 2 years, certainly, of your tenure, and basically has been the dominant issue in terms of how I would describe your tenure on town council. So before we get into your role as a council member with COVID, I want to hear you talk. I want to hear your story about the gym. So before we get into how COVID has affected your gym, let's share the story of the gym itself in the first place, because everybody knows that you run the gym on Grove Street. How did you come to become one of the principal owners? And maybe let's just talk about that. How did you come to become one of the principal owners of that business? What was the thought? What was that lead into?
My current partner Lou asked me if I was interested, and it's one of those things as far as businesses that make part of New Milford what New Milford is, and the gym was one of those things. It's an amazing community, and it was such a sad time to see that place shut down and not help people. if you go into
hold on, shut down prior to COVID, it was shut down briefly while it was exchanging hands for ownership.
Yeah, like the exchanging hands is a nice way to put it, but the previous owners ran into the ground. He had some great ideas, but over time he was I shouldn't use the word funneling, but he was buying stuff and doing stuff and not paying his bills. So it was just a matter of time before it shut down. And so, we approached the owner of the building, Lou and I, and asked him if he'd interested in selling it to us. And he knew that Lou and I were members of the community, which was a big impetus of wanting to push it. So we made that decision, and it's been actually a blessing because, as I said, there's a lot of people that is a big part of their daily routine. It is a community, people that go there, like it, enjoy it, and have a good time. It's just a good place to work out and feel comfortable. And it's, large facilities, very safe, very clean. That's one thing that people say when they go there. It's amazing how clean and safe and they feel when they're in there. As we said, we're part of the members of the community. So there's no way that we were going to do anything even close to what the previous owners have done. So
yeah, I mean, we need to go into that too much here tonight, because I think people who are familiar with the situation are familiar with it, and those that aren't really not important to this conversation tonight. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to know, were you a member of the gym prior? Because that gym's been a gym for a very long time.
No, both my parents were members, and my wife had been a member, but no, I wasn't. But my partners were. We did have a third partner that was involved, but they've since gotten out. And so I wasn't a partner, but being a part of the community and knowing my mom went away there and it was a big part of her life and my dad's life, I knew it was a good opportunity, and we did well. We got it profitable, and COVID hit and we had some bumps in the road, but now we're back to being profitable, and it's good to see the place filled up again.
Yeah. So I do want to touch up on your history, because I think this is going to actually inform some of the things we're going to be talking about later. If people aren't familiar, Mike, can you talk about your history? I know I'm going to ask you to basically pat yourself on the back, but can you talk about your history as a runner and how that might have affected, these decisions as far as your interest in owning a business like this, your interest in youth sports coaching?
Yeah. So I ran it in Brookfield, and I had an okay career, but then I went off to the University of Colorado, and that's where I met my wife. We ran together on the track team and cross country teams. I was an All-American there, which was 4 years of hard work, and it paid off my senior year of cross country. I kept running after college. I didn't want to become a professional runner. So I did it as it's a busy hobby. It takes a lot of time, but I won a lot of road races. I won the Milford 8 miler 5 times, which was fun. I just that race being right in my hometown, I love running that race year after year. So I still compete. I actually ran a race up in Boston today, a cross country race. I run on a master's team, and that went pretty well. I can still compete with some of the young guys. It's getting harder and harder every year, but do the best I can. But I can still go pretty good, and that got me into that lifestyle is part of the reason why I like being involved in the club, is seeing people be healthy and as we've said before, strengthening their immune system and their whole body, trying to with a lot of the things going on health wise, having a strong immune system by working out and eating right is important, and that's stuff that our club really helps people do.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. We've talked about this on the show about mitigation, and we talked about how one of the best things you can do in terms of mitigation, and this is not scary for me to say on Facebook and YouTube. This is well supported and well documented. And yes, we are streaming to Facebook and YouTube. So if Mike says something that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't like and Susan Wojcicki don't like, and we get kicked off, so be it. That's not what I'm trying to do here. If Mike needs to say things, he's just going to say them. And if we lose the stream, we lose the stream. So
it's hard. It's really hard to imagine that being in shape is a questionable thing to say on YouTube. It's like, getting your body stronger, getting fit, as I said, getting overall stronger is something that's questionable to say on YouTube or Facebook. It's hard to imagine we've come to that direction, but we have.
Yeah. So we're going to come back to that. Believe me, we'll circle back to you on that one for sure. But the whole point is that I want folks to understand that when Mike says these sort of the things that he's going to be saying tonight, I think he's actually underselling him. He's a cross country legend in this town. So folks understand, like, like it, I know the history that he just laid out is pretty amazing, but again, it's better than that. He's genuinely a legend in this town. This is coming from somebody who ran cross country in high school and, had somebody to look up to back then, who was winning all the damn races in town. But yeah, so just so people understand that. And, that I think that informs your interest level in these sort of things and where that comes to. So just real quick before we get into that, do you have a routine that you go through now?
Yeah. So my routine, so I used to get up every morning and run with my two dogs, but it was about a year and a half ago when Fairfield County Hounds in Bridgewater disbanded. They had a whole bunch of hounds getting rid of, and so my wife and I took two of the older ones. So now I have four large dogs. So I get up at 4 a.m, early, my light on my head, and 4:30, probably 4:30, sometimes 5. And I walk and, luckily my house backs up to Canterbury School, the trails in the back. And we walk through the trails because I want to get them their exercise too. And then I usually do my workout. We do have a running club with the New Milford Fitness and Aquatics Club. And, that's 3 days a week. I meet with those other days. That group of people, and it's a lot of fun. And then other days I do my own workout, where some days it's like tomorrow I'll probably go for a swim. I'm probably running 5 days a week as I get older. I try to run every day, so I have to break down a little bit. But most of the days I get my workout done in the morning. My run, somewhere between 6 to 8 miles, and then a few times I'll do something in the afternoon if I didn't have if I don't have a council meeting or some other night meeting that I got to get to. So it's some days it's just an easy run, other days we do workouts. It just depends on the day. But
so I
just do just enough to race at the level I'm going at, but not too much more, because it's a little harder.
So people get an understanding of what that equates to. What does that equate to? Let's say you were to run a 5K race today. Let's just pick a race course that everybody knows, the Moonlight 5K. It's a nice flat, just out and back. What would that equate to roughly? What would be your guess?
Right now, well, I ran that race that was part of Riverfest 2 weeks ago. I ran a 17:40, I think.
Good Lord.
Still going pretty quick.
Yeah, I would say so. That's a sub 6 minute mile for more than 3 miles, so folks know at home. And just so everybody knows, Mike won that race. So I know he undersells himself. So let's then get into your business, because I think that's going to inform again the conversation as we move forward. Real quick, were you forced to shut down as a gym?
Yeah. So in March of 2020, we had that. We're going to shut down and flatten the curve for 2 to 3 weeks, and of course in Connecticut that turned to 3 months. Then we got to open up.
You were closed for 3 months.
Yeah. Halfway through March, all of April, all of May, to the end of June, and we didn't start billing our customers again until July 1st.
Holy smokes.
It was definitely tough. And then when we got to open up, of course, we had some restrictions, but there were ones we could work with. We had to do a lot of mitigating factors, and we had an amazing cleaning staff, amazing group of employees that worked their butts off. We were doing classes even before COVID, before our shutdown ended. We started doing live stream classes so that people could do some work. I did work with the health director at the time, and they kind of twisted the rules to help us out. And we started doing outside classes before the gym was allowed to open, which was, we weren't making money on it, but people were happy to come. Yeah. They were extremely happy to come. So we got tents. Durkin's Tents gave us a great deal on tents. And so we got put tents up for the summer, and that helped us a lot. And we did classes outside. We did class outside the whole summer into the fall, just because some people felt comfortable. Then we started doing some inside. And then when winter came, we were completely inside. So it is going well. The hard part was come late fall when they went back to the mask mandate. That's what really hurt us, because people did not want to work out with masks.
Wait, so hold on. Let's clarify this. Let's clarify this. If people were running on a treadmill, they had to wear a mask?
Yeah.
How far apart did you have your treadmill spread out? At
that point, it was by the state mandate. We had our treadmills 12 feet apart, because that our health club is huge.
Yeah.
So we had our treadmills and our spin bikes and all our other stuff 12 feet apart.
And you still
yet
had
they
to wear
still had to
masks
wear
when
masks.
running on a treadmill.
Yeah.
What was the
I mean,
response to that? What was the response to all that from the customer base?
It was hard. Some of them understood and some of them, appreciated it because they were a little scared. Then others, it's, 80% of the people are going to do what we ask based on the state mandates, but you had 10% that were really scared and 10% that didn't want to deal with any of this crap. And trying to keep those two groups happy was not easy. And I as I said, our employees were amazing at trying to deal with that and make sure that none of the we had some upset employees, but they did an amazing job of causing some tense moments, and they had to mitigate them. But it's hard when you have someone that refuses to wear a mask and someone else telling the front desk that person's mask is below their nose, and we have to juggle that. Thank God that the mask mandate went away. What was it in? I guess March, April, and that's when at that point in time is when we started finally. People started coming back to the gym.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't imagine what that would be like. Quite frankly, I wouldn't go. The primary reason I used to go to that gym, Mike, is because I can't stand running in the cold. So I would just go on the treadmill, and I don't know, man, Mike, I couldn't do 4 or 5 miles on a treadmill with a mask on. I just couldn't.
But it's as you said, it's a great environment. It's very safe. We have an amazing heating and ductwork system. So air conditioning system. It's a very safe place to work out. We've had COVID in the gym, but we were tracking people, and when we tell people that someone that was in the gym while you were there had COVID, no one got COVID at our gym. I mean, maybe they did, but as far as that we could document, it was pretty safe place.
So anyone who tested with COVID in your gym got it somewhere else.
Yeah, they got it somewhere else. Let us know. No one seemed to have gotten it from us. Can I prove that? No, but as far as what we went through, we didn't see any of that. Some kids, some families in the pool that were in swim lessons got COVID recently, beginning of summer.
Hold on, were they supposed during that mask mandate? Were people supposed to wear masks in the pool?
The pool was the only place that you didn't have to wear a mask.
All right, waterboarding.
But this family got COVID, and no one that was in the class with them had got it also. So,
okay.
It was, as I'm telling you, it's a big, it's 50,000 square feet. It's a big facility, and it's plenty of places to work out. We even have one room that used to be the small spin room, but now we have the spin room back where Carlson's physical therapy used to be, which is 5,000 square feet. So you can actually sign up and work out in this one room, which is the old spin room, by yourself. You can just go in there by yourself if you don't want to work out with anybody because you want to feel safe.
So, I mean, those are some pretty extraordinary measures you've taken. So, Mike, let's now talk about how that then goes into the policy standpoint. So, quite frankly, Mike really hasn't been all that vocal until fairly recently. And Mike's been really the only councilman who's been fairly vocally against some of the policy decision making going on here in New Milford. And that's really what I think I want to focus on, because as a town council member, you are ostensibly going to be the body that is going to be in charge of policy when it comes to the town of New Milford. So let's just ask the tough questions right away. What are some of the local policies that you've disagreed with?
Well, it's not as much of a disagreement as I just wish more people would question some of the stuff happening. We've luckily the town council we don't have to wear masks anymore, but we've talked about masks in school, and I know Eric talked about it too. I just don't understand how we can be a year and a half into this pandemic and we don't have any hard data on whether masks actually help mitigate COVID in the schools. I haven't seen it. I've asked for it. I'd like to see it. Do masks actually help it out? If it does, that's fine, then we can do it. But we don't talk about the negatives of wearing the masks in school. It's harder to teach. The fact that their oxygen levels are dropping, and they say, well, the oxygen's fine. Well, if they're wearing a mask properly, your oxygen level is going to go down. So does that mean they're not wearing a mask properly? So then what's it doing in the first place? As I said, just start showing us some facts and some data that says that this actually makes sense.
So okay, so that to that effect, then. I think you've already answered this question in town council meetings, but the town council really has a limited role with the Board of Education. But to that regard, I mean, you've been a coach at the high school level. How do you feel about young kids wearing masks in the classroom or out on the track, let's say?
Well, luckily last year we had a fairly mild winter. So during indoor track last year, we almost exclusively, I think I had 2 practices where I had to be inside because it was too cold, and we had to wear a mask, and I limited to doing weight room stuff so that your heart rate wasn't getting up that high. But we were mostly outside. We had opportunities to race, and I talked to the kids and I said that I do not feel comfortable you racing in a mask. Now I'm distance. I coach the 600 and up. So anybody racing 600 and up, we did not have them race at the indoor meets.
Wow. All right.
And anyone racing below that, they did race, but when you're going below that, it's aerobic versus anaerobic. If you're sprinting, you don't need oxygen. So it was, the 300's kind of close, and that kind of left up to the kids and the sprinters. But as far as the distance, I refused to let them. I told the parents, I told the kids, I said, you're not racing indoors. We did one with Danbury and one with Pomperaug. With Newtown, we planned 2 outdoor meets in the middle of the winter that I checked the weather. We got a couple warm days. Luckily the track was clear, and we had 2 outdoor meets in February. And that was it. That was all I did. And you know what? We had an amazing outdoor season. I think that sometimes we overdo indoors and over race and overtrain these kids. And our kids, we had an amazing outdoor season. Both the boys, I think, were 3rd at states, and the girls were 4th or something like that. I can't remember.
And the girls had a 4 by mile. I think that was like 5th in the country or something. They're all American.
Yeah, they're all American. Yeah. They are amazing runners, and it was great. And so I hope when indoor comes this year, I remember that over racing is not always the best thing, but we can go into the details.
True.
But I did not. Yeah, I forbid them to race indoors.
So that sounds like you're applying a standard of competing interests here. Like, we have the concern, which is getting rid of COVID, and we also have the concern, which is girls not collapsing on a track.
Like that girl in Oregon.
Yeah. So we have some. So it sounds to me like you believe that there exists in that competing interests exist. They are a thing.
And it's true, and that's I get it, but you go to the basketball games at the school last winter. Most of those kids' masks had fallen below their nose, I don't know how you jump up. Why are you forcing someone to wear a mask if they're not going to wear it properly? These cloth masks look good, but they're not N95 masks. They're not actually keeping germs out, and so I as I said, just someone show me the data that it helps. But, I'm hoping to God that they don't make kids wear masks indoors again for sports. I know volleyball had to do it this fall. Now, volleyball is more of a strength sport than it is an endurance sport. So, maybe it's a little easier, but I feel sorry for those kids.
So to that respect, then, since you haven't been presented with that data, in the absence of that data, should masks be mandatory?
As I said, there's a lot of countries that don't require it for their kids in schools. There's a lot of states in the other parts of the country don't require it. I think that, we need to start looking at the negatives of wearing the mask. And one is it's a lot, especially for ESL, but it's harder to teach. I was talking to a chemistry teacher in the school, and she says, if I don't see the kid's face, it's hard for me to see if they get the concept or not. Because it's looking at it's like a poker face. If someone's wearing a mask, they're constantly in a poker face. So you don't know what's going through their mind. So she has a hard time reading whether kids are getting concept or not while she's up there teaching. I still believe in that if a mask is worn properly. Now, most of those kids aren't wearing it 100% properly, wearing some cloth mask. But if it's worn properly, I still feel your oxygen intake is lower, and you're still inhaling your exhale. So, your carbon monoxide. So I don't feel safe. Now, do I have document to pass it up? No, but I'm a councilman. I shouldn't have the document. The document should be coming from the town, from our health director, from the state. Show me the documentation that says this works. Because, as schools started in the South, the numbers in COVID has gone down, and a lot of those schools aren't forcing masks, or they're leaving it up to the kids. So how are the numbers decreasing as mask wearing is decreasing, as they're back in school? There's just questions I ask myself that are, critically thinking, this doesn't make sense.
All right. Well, then in that regard, how about vaccines then? And let's focus this in on what your role is on the town council. So let's say all of the restrictions from Connecticut have been lifted. Would you ever be in favor of a policy that was proposed to town council to mandate town employees get vaccinated?
No, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be. Now, the vaccine, everything I look at in my life is risk versus reward. A 25-year-old person who had COVID, the risk of the vaccine with, and I'm not saying the vaccine has a lot of risk, but the risk versus vaccine versus the reward. You had COVID, you're healthy, you're 20-year-old. I don't feel that person should be mandated to get it. These, a lot of these people in the military already previously had COVID. Yeah, and the military, they're healthy people. I don't believe that's important. My mom, that's a different story. My mom's 80, and she's got a blood disease that's under control. But you know what? My mom is someone that should have the vaccine. It's the risk versus reward. So should it be mandated?
Okay.
I don't believe anything should be mandated. I think it's a decision between your doctor. As I said, you go to your doctor, and the doctor looks at you and said, "Listen, you're a healthy 30, 40-year-old, and you had COVID." And you got through it, and now you have the natural antibodies, which have been shown to be very, very strong. Let's just not get the vaccine because I don't feel I need it. That's not allowed anymore. That doctor's going to get in trouble if they suggest that, especially if they post something like that on Facebook.
So then, okay, let's go straight to the point then. Can you be pro-vaccine and also anti-mandate?
I think that a good portion. I mean, you look at Southwest Airlines. A lot of those people were vaccinated that didn't show up for work because they're ex-military. They understand freedoms, and they understand that if you're forcing people to let their give up their vaccine, their freedoms by forcing them to get a vaccine, and the medical history is supposed to be something that's just between them and their doctor. I believe that's touching on our liberties, and it's getting a little scary. So, there's a lot of people that are vaccinated that just do not believe that we should be forcing this upon anybody. And, especially something that, let's look at children. I think I heard a study today, you probably know better than I do, but it was like 12 kids that died of COVID that did not have underlying condition throughout this whole pandemic. I don't know if you've heard that stat.
Well, Jeremy, that might be a recent update because Jeremy Levin actually, at his not the last presentation to town council, but the one before, explicitly said that every single person who has died with COVID under 18 had, quote, severe complications.
Yeah. So again, back to risk versus reward. You're a healthy 10-year-old, 12-year-old. Is that something you want to do? There's not a lot of history in this vaccine, and everyone compares it to the mumps and MMR. MMR, if you get those things, you're in pretty big trouble. If you get COVID as a kid, you're most likely getting through it. And so I don't understand the need to do it. I still look at chickenpox. When we were kids, you had the chickenpox parties. Now, I'm not saying that was the best way of doing it, and I definitely don't want to do it with COVID because it's a little bit more dangerous. But people that have chickenpox as kids have a very good immunity to it.
That's why we had pox parties as kids before there was a vaccine, because it was so safe for kids to get it and so horribly dangerous for adults to get it that you force it upon your kids. So with that said, then let's go back. Let's refer back to the town council and the role and there. You've been really the only one that's offered any pushback to the presentations from, let's say, Lisa Morrissey, and you were kind of the star of the show a few weeks ago when we talked about all that. So where is that pushback coming from? What's it based on for you?
I think critically. I look at a lot of things that are going on in the world, and it scares me. I don't fully believe people understand how our rights and freedoms are being whittled away. I mean, you look at our governor who extended his mandate or his
emergency powers,
executive powers, and the reason he said he did it is because he doesn't know about the next variant that's coming, and he wants to be able to quickly react. I'm like, quickly react. You can call in a special session to talk about giving back these powers, or you can set up metrics and say, okay, if hospitalizations get to this number, then we'll go to code, whatever. I mean, you can set up those metrics, whatever the metrics are, and have certain things happen based on that, but that should be voted on by the legislature. The fact that one man can make these decisions is crazy. I mean, you just heard that that 7,000 absentee ballots were just sent out to a bunch of people.
Well, they were they were the application forms for them.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought, but those are things that are getting done because of, executive power. You can just do it now because instead of having to have a reason for doing it, now it can just be done because of his executive orders. I mean, I don't know the true way that's working, but those are things that just scare me. So I think critically of it. I look at our president right now saying that in the fall, we're going to have a booster for everybody before it was voted on by the FDA. And the FDA said, no, we're not doing that. And they gave him pushback. But the fact that a politician stated what was going to happen in the FDA before the FDA did it, and no one thought that was a problem. Those things frustrate me. Right now, I am terrified for my health club that the governor's going to say, you know what? Numbers are going up a little bit. We need to go to backs and masks because at the gym, anywhere indoors. Because once he does that, we're going to lose members left and right. That is, as I said, March is when we finally started having that gym get filled up again because people didn't have to wear masks.
So this pushback,
and he can do that. He doesn't have to call up Bill Buckby. I mean, he doesn't have to. I can't call up Bill Buckby and say, Bill, masks are going to hurt our business. Really fight. We have a big gym. We're not a small little box boutique gym. We have a big gym. He can't just unilaterally say everybody indoors, including all gyms, have to wear masks because Bill can't go there and argue that point because Bill has no power because he's got, the governor has universal power to do whatever he wants. And that's scary. That's not the legislative process.
So this pushback then that you've been offering to Health Director Lisa Morrissey, is that a Hartford issue and a DC issue, or is that something that's specific to New Milford? Is that a policy discussion that should be had?
No, I don't think Lisa's hands are tied. I mean, she can't get rid of the mask mandate in school. Even if she did and something happened, she's not willing to take that risk. I don't blame her for the decision she's making. But I do feel that she should still get the information that's supporting these decisions the governor's making and let us know. And if, don't just say we're gonna have a mask mandate in school because the state is saying it. We're having a mask mandate in school because we've looked at this data and the data says this is what happens if you wear masks. That's what she should be doing. Anybody can just regurgitate what the state's telling us to do, but it's up to our employees and our politicians to actually interpret that and say whether it's good for our town and our corner of the state.
So then as a councilman, when it comes to policy decision making, should you be doing that research on your own, or is Lisa Morrissey as our health director obligated to provide that to you?
Well, I can't say what she's obligated to provide to me, but if I ask her for the data that backs up this policy in town of New Milford, I should be able to get that.
So what kind of metrics would you be looking for? What's the most important metric that you would want to see?
Well, I think the two, and I want to see the metrics because now they're talking about vaccines from 5 to 11-year-olds. And now I know that's the Board of Ed and that's their thing, but vaccines from 5 to 11-year-olds, I feel we need to see the metrics on risk versus reward for all that. Okay. Because there are some negatives of the vaccine. You can't say there's none. There are definitely negatives. You're putting a foreign substance in your body, and we got to compare those risks versus the safety of the vaccine and the efficacy of the vaccine and the safety of kids getting COVID naturally. I as I said, I'm not saying we should have COVID parties, but kids aren't at high risk. So it makes sense to have the vaccine? And I know Lisa the other day said, well, it puts pressure on parents if kids get COVID because then they got to take off work. Well, that's not a reason to give a kid a vaccine. The reason you get a kid a vaccine is because if they don't get that vaccine, they could be in trouble health-wise. And so we have to see the data with that. And I don't feel like we're getting that data.
Well, what would be one metric that we're not getting then?
Well, she mentioned the other day that I said, I mentioned the number of children have died from it. And she said, well, it's not all children. She started talking about some of the negative side effects of COVID. Well, show me that based on the number of kids that have gotten COVID, how many right now have long-term illnesses?
Okay.
What's that percentage? Because you can't go with anecdotal evidence to make policy, but that seems to be what we're doing.
Very, very, very good point. So with that said, we've been harping on COVID for a while now. So let's get the last question out of the way. What would be then crossing the line for you when it comes to, because you talked about how a lot of these policies that we're instituting from 10 Main Street are policies that have to be instituted because of what's coming in from DC and Hartford. let's focus in on Hartford and say, you as a councilman, what is the line? What is the point at which you would say this policy that's coming in from Hartford, we're not enforcing? We're not going to do it, period.
Well, I truly believe if we go to vaccine mandates for our employees at New Milford, and that hasn't been mandated, it's being hinted at and being pushed. But if we go with that, I think that's something that I think we need to push back with Hartford. Are we going to do it? I don't know. I mean, it's something that's scary. I mean, you look at some of these employees that are being forced to get vaccinated throughout the country, and people are losing their livelihoods because they have a different belief in their health and safety. I mean, I feel horrible for that teacher up near Hartford. It was the teacher of the year, and he doesn't eat meat. He's complete vegan. He takes no shots, takes no aspirin, takes nothing. He does not want to get a vaccine. He's now moving out of the state to get a job because he had to be let go.
Fair.
So those are things that you're losing great employees. You're losing great health workers. Now, these health workers have been in the line, from the beginning. Now, let's say this health worker got COVID, last winter. Why are we making force them to get a vaccine when they have natural immunities? And I mean, this study's coming out about natural immunities is very good. I mean, you're better off with natural immunities than you are with the vaccine. Now, as I said, I'm not saying that the vaccine is something you shouldn't get. I do believe it's good, but other countries, I know that if you want to get a vaccine card in certain countries, you can list that you've previously had COVID at a certain period of time, whether it's 6 months, whatever it is. That's just as good as having a vaccine in other countries. Why isn't that good enough in this country?
So, all right. So that kind of wraps up our conversation here with COVID, and that's just kind of informing people on what's been happening so far. And really the only thing the town council does on a regular and ongoing basis is the budget. A lot of your policy decision making happens ad hoc. It's not like you've got like some giant multi-decade, issue to deal with for the most part. And usually you guys take these things catch can. So we're going to talk about the only two things I can think of that you're definitely going to run into over the course of the next tenure, the next term. And those are the ARPA funds and the budget. So I'll try to be as brief as I can about all this while also hitting out the main points. As vocal as you've been when you're pushed back when it comes to COVID, you haven't really said all that much about the ARPA fund. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So let's talk about just the stuff that's already been passed as far as expenses. What are your thoughts on them? Do they actually tie back to COVID?
Yeah. First, I want to talk back your point about pushback and COVID. I'm not fighting any of the decisions that we're making, and I'm not trying to be a pain in the butt there. I just want people to ask questions when policy is made about COVID, and is it really the best? And that's all I'm asking. Like you and I were in agreement with the masks at the town council meeting. We're all safe, and people that are vaccinated have a level of safety in them. Most likely they get sick. It's not going to be that bad. The masks, as spread out as we are in that room, it just didn't make sense, and that's why I question some of these things are being just automatically done, and everyone just says, oh, it's just. Well, it started with it was just 2 weeks, turned into 3 months into longer. It's just the mask. It's just what these kids have been wearing the mask going on almost 2 years in the schools. It's not just so, but let's move on. So as far as the budget, first of all, let's talk about the funds. The funds that we're getting from the Fed. I have a big metric, and I think most of the council agrees with me, is whatever we do with those funds, it can't create any kind of a mandate down the road, because that's going to affect our tax revenue. So, that's the key, is whatever we can do that is allowed to be, those funds to be used for, it's got to be one-time events. And so, I do appreciate that. It's tough. It's a lot of money, and we're trying to figure out the best way to use it. So, Pete's got a list, and, we've been voting on those things little by little. I know that a couple of my colleagues talked about giving some money to the teachers and the first responders, but I think there's going to be some union issues with that. And where do you stop? Do you give it to the healthcare workers in town because they were in the front lines, teachers they want to do, and firefighters. And, I don't think that's a good way to do it. But I think some of the other things that we're doing with it, where you're buying one-time expense, like, let's say a fire truck for one of the fire departments, or, that type of thing. We're actually talking about using a lot of money to fix the reservoir, the dam at the reservoir is past its usefulness, and we need to get that tied up. Those things that if you can use one-time funds. One thing I'd like to talk to Pete about is using the money to redo or upgrade all the air conditioning, heating systems, the ventilating systems, so that we don't have to have these kids wear masks in the schools. I don't know if the Board of Ed is talking about that, but if we can do anything at all possible to make it safer in there so that kids don't have to wear masks, I think that should be a priority, because it is becoming a detriment to teaching, to wearing masks 24/7.
Do you have any concerns that the ideas that are being tossed about for these expenditures, do you have any concern with their relationship to actual COVID? I realize the dam needs to be fixed, but is there is the relationship to COVID as direct as you'd prefer?
It's not very direct, and it's just too much money. I mean, every town in the country is getting this pot of money, and how much can you really do at COVID as it's winding down anyway? And people can have that argument or not, but it's we have a lot of people vaccinated, and this thing is under control. The hospitalizations are in the 200s, and as opposed to being over above 1,000. So how much can you really do at COVID except maybe prepare for the next pandemic? It's just so much freaking money. I mean, you got to come up with ways to do it. And I don't know if there's enough ways to do it just for COVID reasons.
So if you weren't forced to tie it to COVID and you were allowed to just kick it back to the taxpayers, would you be in favor of that?
You mean let them vote on it?
Well, not let them vote on it, because they're going to do that anyways. But I mean, as just like, well, we taxed you to get this money in the first place. Or if we didn't tax you, we effectively taxed you by just printing money.
Yeah.
To the tune of $7.9 million. Would you be in favor, if those restrictions weren't there, to just say, listen, $1 million of this is just going to be a tax refund?
Yeah, but that's definitely not allowed, because that's the one thing that.
True, but would you be in favor of it if it was?
Yeah, I don't think that would be a negative thing to put it for taxes, or put it in a rainy day fund or something to that effect, so we can keep taxes at least flat for the next 10 years or whatever it is. But personally, I think it's the stupidest concept ever. As you said, we're borrowing from our children by either printing money with inflation or just outright borrowing the money to give to the towns to buy votes. It's basically what it is. It's a horrible, horrible concept that we're going through. And to me, it's making us more of a socialistic country, to where people, the first thing they do is look to the government for help. And hey, I did it at my gym. I mean, I had to look to the government for help, and I had to get the PPP loans, because we were going backwards. We were losing money and barely able to keep those doors open. So this pandemic, more than anything else in the history of this country, has pushed us more into a socialistic nation, where people, first thing to do is look to government for help. Now that is one reason why I like Milford, is people, there's a lot of volunteers and help in this town that aren't all government related, that help people out. But it's amazing, because now all those nonprofits are looking to get money from this COVID relief fund. So it is now the same thing. It's like everyone's looking to the government for help. And that's just, to me, a bad concept. So
to that effect then, and this would be doing the exact opposite. This is something I've talked about on the show with those funds. Would you be in favor of setting aside homeschool vouchers? That's
one of the things. And, my kids were put up in the public school system, two of them. One of them had some trouble with grades, so he ended up going to a private school. But my kids had a great experience in New Milford school system, so I feel like I got my dollars for my tax dollars were well worth it. My kids are super successful in college, and I feel that they got a great foundation in this town. But it is a tough thing for people that live in town and either homeschool their kids or send them to private school, and they still have to pay the same property taxes as I do. So I'm not against school vouchers. I'm hoping that's something that we can look at too. I don't know if it's ever going to be something done on the local level, because it can put our town at a disadvantage than other towns. But if that's something that started at a state level, I think it would be a great concept.
But would you be in favor of using some of these ARPA funds for that sort of thing? Because again, homeschooling in Connecticut has just absolutely exploded over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And in direct response to COVID too. So
yeah, I think that there should be some ways to help them out. I don't know if it's with these funds or however, if it's I don't know. It's something that has to be talked about. I'm not ready to say that I totally agree with using these funds for homeschool vouchers. But I do feel we should stop making it so difficult for homeschool people to participate in stuff. I know one thing that drives me crazy is that a kid that lives in our town is homeschooled, can't do sports at the school system. They're paying tax dollars just as much as my kids that ran track, yet that kid can't run track. They don't have that opportunity. I don't understand why that's not allowed.
Is that actually, wait a minute, is that actually true? Because
yeah, I actually had for someone that's homeschooled asked me that, and I actually asked their athletic director, and they said, you have to be registered in school.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. According to our athletic director, you have to be registered in the school. So
yeah, and that's a simple thing. That doesn't even cost us anything.
Yeah.
To do, and I don't know if that's a state thing or if it's something from our school district, but it's a horrible policy.
Yeah, it sounds like a bad one to me too. So we only got another minute or two. So before we get into Q&A, we'll just ask one or two questions about the budget, because that's another topic that we know is going to come up in February, March, April, May of next year, like it always does. So again, for everyone watching at home on YouTube, for everyone watching on Facebook, get those questions in. We will get to your questions in just a minute or two, because we only have a minute or two here before we got to get to Q&A. But yeah, get those questions in. We'll get to them in just a moment. So Mike, we'll just ask a couple of questions on the budget. First things first, let's just ask the straightforward question. Has the Board of Education budget ever been cut?
No, it's that one of those things is where the Board of Education budget comes to us, and it's an increase from last year, and we cut it down half that increase. Let's say it's still an increase over last year, but of course everyone says it's been cut. So isn't there a state mandate you can't cut education budget from the previous year? Isn't there something? So
you can, but it takes pretty extraordinary circumstances to meet that criteria, and you're probably almost certainly going to get a lawsuit no matter what. Yeah. So from the teachers union. So the last thing on the budget, let's just make this a two-part question, and we'll try to cram it into one. What's the origin of your decision-making when it comes to budget time? What are the things that you look at, and what are some areas of improvement?
Well, I wonder at sometimes if we, Pete does a good job, but should we go back to dollar-based budgeting where you got to start from zero each year? I don't know. I feel that, there's a lot of things that you can cut that are fluff that need to come out. I think Pete's done a good job of that. And, as I said before, I'm not against spending money. I voted in favor of the library expansion because it is such a big part of our community. But, we do need to look more detailed at it. I'm more of I think the best way to help our budgets, keeping things within reason is to increase the tax base with businesses in town. I think that's huge to make this town more business friendly. We are stuck in Connecticut, but within Connecticut, we're a pretty good town, but it's hard to get things moving through here. I'm about to go through it, as I said, with the place I'm building. I got to start, I'm should hopefully have some plans pretty soon, and I got to start going to all these meetings to get stuff through. And it's a long, tedious process. That should be made a lot easier. But if we can get some businesses in here, some a hotel would be nice, stuff like that can actually increase, create good jobs in the town so people don't have to leave, and that way increase the tax base. I think would be a much better a way to do it.
So, all right. So, so let's go into our Q&A. Thanks for everybody for joining in. If there's anyone that's still out there, apparently this is Joe D on YouTube. Your feed got pulled from Facebook. So I think maybe we've accomplished our goals here tonight, Mike. Can a council member vote on the budget if either their organization is affected by the vote or if they are in litigation with the town? I don't know, but everyone's affected by the budget. I'm a taxpayer, and I have two businesses in town, and I'm a homeowner in town, so I'm affected by every budget because I have taxes I pay. But I still vote on the budget. I think everybody's affected by everything. Now, people do recuse themselves. I mean, just last week, I recused myself when I was voting I'm a member of the Economic Development Corporation, and I recused myself because we were voting on making that the development arm for this town, where we would really work to help develop the town and increase the jobs. So you can definitely recuse yourself. I think it's up to the individual council member to be honest and do that. And I would definitely do that if it was affecting me directly. Now,
yes, everything I vote on is going to be affected me by my tax roll, but that means that no one can vote because everyone's got to have to be a taxpayer in town in order to be on the council. So that doesn't make much sense. As far as litigation, I don't know. I mean, luckily we have Randy there at every meeting, and if someone is involved in litigation and had to vote on something, I hope to God that they would recuse themselves, because that gets a little scary.
So if they are going to recuse themselves, that means they would abstain from participating in the conversation altogether. There is abstainment from voting. So, I mean, are we talking about a full recusal or just abstaining from voting?
Well, abstaining from voting is, I mean, that's what that's your record is, you're voting. I mean, you should be able to, you can talk about stuff, I guess, but your vote shouldn't be counted as if it's directly affecting you in that way with litigation or something to that effect.
All right. So here's the last question. So folks, we are recording this locally, thank God. So if the stream really did get yanked from Facebook, folks at home, I'll try to re-upload it as best as I can, both to Facebook and to YouTube. And I'll definitely be back up, since this one apparently got yanked. I don't know if that's actually the case, but if it did, I'll be uploading it to Odyssey, where I know my buddy Jeremy Kaufman, who's been a friend of mine for 20 years now. He's the CEO of that company. He won't pull us down from there. So if you guys are looking for this, I'll make sure to back this up somewhere where we will actually be able to post this, which is just frustrating since Mike and I really haven't said anything controversial. Really.
That's it. We're just questioning a few things. We haven't said anything one way or the other.
Yeah, I haven't given my honest opinion on masks, which as somebody I would describe myself as a PPE expert, I'm not allowed to say my actual thoughts on that matter. So this is the last question for the night from the audience. This is again from Joe D. Councilman, so he disagrees. And I think in context, this was with our conversation about how Lisa Morrissey should be providing us certain information to the town council. I disagree, Councilman. I understand the onus of proof lies firmly on the one making the assertion. However, why wouldn't you do the research to back up your positions regardless?
I have actually done the research, and I have my documentation. You know right now, I mean, you go to the internet, you can get documentation that it's crazy, but I go to the CDC. I bring my laptop to every meeting now, and have documentation there. So if I am questioned, I can bring it up. So I do back up mine, but I do feel also that if Lisa's making policy, she should also have that information. And if she's making a claim that we're making this policy based on these facts, we should get those facts from her.
All right. So Mike, I gave you an opportunity to plug a nonprofit at the beginning, and it was the culinary school. You want to use that opportunity now before we sign off?
No, I mean, as I said, if you do want to, if you know anybody that needs some job training, the culinary school is amazing. What it does for one, feeding people in social services, the needy in our town, and the senior citizens is amazing. But it's also going to teach you to get a career, a good career in the culinary food industry. So that we have a problem right now with jobs that are open, but workers that aren't qualified for those jobs, and this can get you qualified to get a good job. So it's an amazing program. It
sure is. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. Folks, remember to tune in tomorrow night at 7 p.m. as we have our interview with our first Board of Finance member, Diane Clave. So, Mike, thanks for tuning in. Folks at home, thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you soon. Good night, everybody.